Okay, so I would like to start from your childhood and ask you about your childhood and what it was like and where the movie is a big part of it.
Yes, I grew up in Malibu, and our babysitter, I mean, my parents were teachers. Malibu when I grew up, just so you know, it doesn't have to be in the story. Malibu was mainly people who didn't mind the long drive into the city, people who wanted to have horses and goats and chickens. It was very rural, and we had an incredible ability to ride our horses to the beach. It was an idyllic, perfect childhood. And in growing up there, my parents, because we lived so far away and because they were teachers, they would be gone for many hours. So when we got out of school, the woman who was our babysitter was an ex-actress. And she didn't have big parts, but she had little parts. And she told me early on, and I must have been anywhere from the grade of second grade up to sixth grade. We would go to her house after school, and she had a little house down in the what we call the gully behind her house, and she had it full of costumes. And I would ask her where all these really pretty dresses would come from, and she told me, if you're friends with the people in costume, they'll give you things. So I remember as a child wearing high heels and dresses, nightgowns up and down the hill to the little house, and my babysitter, her name was Ivy Lane as her movie star name, but Ivy Mathewson was her married name. And she would tell me that they were Marilyn Monroe nightgowns. She would tell me that all these famous actresses. So I would wear all of these dresses and, just drag my heels up and down the hill wearing these beautiful satin and silk kind of pieces. And it's that feeling of the cloth and the feeling of the costume. So, that was my first inspiration, is having her as this kind of guiding light with film. She would always just play old movies. And when I graduated high school, I was, growing up in Malibu, in my age group, we had home ec. And I loved making my own clothes because we didn't have that opportunity where we lived. If I wanted something that I saw in a magazine or on a TV show, I would have to make it. So
Mhm.
I learned how to sew early on. And so throughout high school, that was my inspiration, between Ivy Lane and knowing how to sew and being able to create not only things for myself, but things for my friends. I made satin outfits for guy friends who wanted to, the inspiration was David Bowie. And,
Uh-huh.
I made a lot of satin pants in my time. And satin jackets too. And so that was a huge influence. So I went to fashion school. And in fashion school, I received a lot of parking tickets because my parents paid for the education, but the things like parking were far too expensive. And so I received so many parking tickets. My friend said, you need to go to court at the end of the year and ask the judge to be able to, um, you know, just he'll write it off. Dress nice, and he'll let you go. And I'm like, great. So I wore this really cute 1940s, light pink suit, and had my hair. It was really long blonde hair back in a ponytail. Don't know if that was the move, but I tried to look nice. And I went down to court and I told him that he said it's, a couple $1,000s. And I was like, "Ooh, I
Mhm.
didn't expect that." I kind of thought that I don't know what I thought, but certainly didn't think too much. And so the court reporter took was a mom of somebody I went to school with. It's a small town, Malibu. And so she said, "Can she do public service?" And the judge didn't say anything. He just put the gavel down. He goes, "Public service." And that was the moment that I went into Santa Monica. And public service is something they offered in the court system, and they still do. And there's a lot of choices. he gave me a lot of choices. And, one of them was working at a community theater. And that was any theater that was 99 seats or less.
Hmm.
You did it as a volunteer and you got experience that way. And amazing actors would work in community theater because it gave them a chance, to be able to stretch their, acting chops. So my first day, I went the um, into the theater, and the costume designer said, can you just stay here? It's the first run through of Bertolt Brecht's Mother Courage. Can you just stay and take notes from the actors? And there was like 20 people on stage. And I'm like, yeah. And she goes, it won't be. You can handle it. And I'm like, okay, I've not done this before. She goes, you'll be fine. And she left, and there I was, and every actor came up to me. And it was that moment in my life where I watched the whole run through, and then each one of them came up and told me something that they would like from their costume for their character. And it was just this light bulb moment, like how costuming can influence the performance of these actors. And it was that moment that I was like, this is really cool. And one woman wanted a larger flower on her hat because she was so far, so deep on the stage that she wanted to be able to be seen with the lighting. And I'm like, fascinating. Another guy wanted a heavier pair of shoes so that he could feel his walk. So it was a little bit more of a struggle to get across stage. I'm like, all of these things kind of really stayed with me. And when I called her the next day and I said, "Hi, it's Lisa, and I have notes from last night." She's like, "Lisa who?" And I'm like, Lisa Lovaas, your court appointed, assistant, I guess." And she goes, "In all the years I've been doing this, nobody has ever called back." And I'm like, not only am I calling back, but it was one of the most kind of interesting evenings. And I would really appreciate being with you every day because I think there's something in this that really talks to me. And I think that was that moment, where I was put into a situation that I wasn't aware how it could influence my life. Fashion was a bit of a struggle downtown. It's not glamorous. Not that
Hmm.
costuming is anywhere near glamorous, but it was that moment where I just connected with the actors on stage. I connected with the job. And she was this incredible Esther Kashkin. She was this amazing costume designer slash teacher who, kind of much like Ivy, kind of helped me. And much like my teachers in home economics, kind of saw that I was passionate about these things and they spent extra time with me. So I was in theater for up to 4 years. It wasn't a paying job. But I was able to do alterations at night and pay for my, to keep me going. And from there, I went into commercials. I
Oh,
met a woman and she was a costume designer for commercials, a stylist for commercials, and she put me on a bunch of commercials. And from there, I just went right into movies. And I never looked back. I mean, honestly, I have been super fortunate. I have done back-to-back movies for over 40 years. One of them being I was the assistant costume designer on JFK.
yeah, that was one of my questions for later.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And so from my childhood, I was very focused
focused.
on it being fabric, it being costumes, it being fashion. This was what really drove my passion and my creativity is the art through storytelling in costume design.
Beautiful. Yeah, I was gonna ask you about how did you make the jump from fashion to costume designing, but you already answered the question. Basically, it was very
Yes.
organic how you went from one to the other, and then also from
Yeah.
stage and then to features, basically.
Yes.
And what did you learn on your very first movie, which, if I'm not mistaken, is a movie starring Whoopi Goldberg, a burglar?
Well,
Is that
My very first movie
that's not it,
is
right?
much deeper than that. Yeah, I did
Okay.
quite a few. I do believe that my first feature that I put down, Whoopi Goldberg with Susan Becker as the costume designer, an incredible woman. Um, that I did a lot of films, but they were like I was on for 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
Okay.
Not something that I felt like I had a major part or a credit at the end of the
Yeah.
film.
Okay.
So when I met with Susan Becker, I worked as her assistant to the costume designer, which is a different position than
Yes.
assistant costume designer. And she showed me the ropes. And then she was the one, I think she was the first one to hire me just out of the gate as a costume supervisor. And a costume supervisor in California is somebody who puts together the entire team, runs the entire program, is responsible for the character breakdown, for fittings, for everything in assisting the costume designer to have a perfect show, and for the
Okay.
production to keep things going. So I think that Susan kind of saw me as somebody that has that capacity, and that's how I moved into being that's like the top position outside of costume designer, and then it's the supervisor on most films in Los Angeles. It's a different position in New York. It's a different position, of course, in different parts of the world. But in Los Angeles, that is the first position hired. So yeah. So
Uh,
that's so. But yeah, Burglar with Whoopi Goldberg.
yeah,
Yes.
1987.
Yeah.
What would you say you learned from that experience? Like, now, like this was a movie that was starring a movie star. Basically, Whoopi Goldberg was a major star, and uh,
Major star. She and Susan Becker was a major costume designer. I mean, I was super fortunate. I think it's my passion and my energy and I just love, and I still do. I love what I do. And I'm just really fortunate. And I think it comes across that I'm 100% into it and 100% there. And to the expense of, you put other things in your life on the back burner. I didn't, the holidays with family and things like that were always a little further, behind what was scheduled. But that's just the film business. When you're film person, that is the forefront of your life. That's your passion. So
absolutely. So in 1991, you end up working on Oliver Stone's JFK alongside Marlene Stewart, who was
yes.
the costume
Yeah.
designer on the film. So my question is, how did you end up working on that specific film? And did Oliver Stone have specific ideas about the costumes in the movie? Or did he leave you guys like free reign to go and come up with what you felt was right and true to the period?
Well, Marlene had just come off the doors. So
Okay.
she's an amazing talent, and I don't even know how I ended up on that film. I mean, I'd have to really think about it and go through my personal resume and find those moments.
The dots
I
connecting.
was I was fortunate to be hired on that. It was a very intense situation because it's huge. The movie
Yeah.
was huge, and the budget was not as huge as it needed to be. So in putting together, and it was shooting all over the country.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, yes, Oliver Stone had, like any director, he has a strong opinion. He has he has a vision. He knew the period. He knew what he wanted. He communicated a lot with Marlene in things that she wanted, and I helped facilitate getting those things done. Marlene and I remember endless nights with the two of us under fluorescent lighting in a small office at Western Costume, putting little tiny scraps of fabric. Back then, your swatches that you would have, you'd have to send some to the director on a lookbook, page. You'd
Okay.
have some that you'd have to send to the man, tailor, who's going to make it. So what you ended up with were these tiny little squares under fluorescent lights at 10 o'clock at night with your eyeballs just burning, trying to put together what characters were going to wear for days, that for the opening scene, for his next scene. Will this vest look good with this jacket? It was it was crazy. And decisions were made, sometimes late at night under fluorescent lights. Sometimes we would be able to do these kind of things during the day and take it outside and look. But it was many hours. I mean, I think those days on JFK were very intense. Many, 16-hour days, 7 days a week to put that together. We were in Dallas shooting all of the scenes for Dallas.
Luciano.
New Orleans. I
Luciano.
remember, oh, what is that actor? Oh, he is amazing, funny guy. He was in JFK.
Joe Pesci. Joe
No, no,
Pesci.
the comedian
John
John
Candy.
Candy.
John Candy.
John Candy, his suit, by, I mean, when you look at it, you'll see, but by 8 o'clock in the morning, when we would just be getting ready to go to set, you'll see that his suit is two different tones
Hmm.
because the humidity and the sweat
Yeah.
would, so you see the collar is one color. It's because it's two layers
Uh-huh.
of three layers with fusing to get the collar. And you see that there's just the humidity and the sweat. Things you don't know when you're, putting together things. And there's nothing you can do. It's just life in New Orleans. And so we had these incredible moments, an incredible cast on that movie. I mean, endless.
Tommy Lee
Um,
Jones, Gary Oldman, Joe Pesci,
oh,
John Candy again, like
yes.
Kevin
Oh,
himself,
Walter Matthau,
Walter Matthau, Jack Lemmon,
Jack Lemmon. Jack Lemmon was one
Kevin
of those.
Bacon.
Yeah, Jack Lemmon. There's a rack of clothes when we would go to his place, his office in Beverly Hills to fit him, and there would be things that were extra large or things that were small, and no matter what he would put on, he would do that with his shoulders, and he'd look in the mirror, and he would feel that moment and that character. It was an incredible experience. And then and then he would put on extra large and he would do the same kind of thing. He'd look at himself in the mirror and he would feel that character. Like he made things work beautifully and I could watch him kind of find that character in clothes that were not made for him. These were rentals that
Okay.
were not made for him, he was able to see himself as that character. Right then, it didn't matter the size. He was able to shape his body. Incredible experience with him. Walter Matthau, another incredible experience on that fitting. I just think that was one of those movies. Tommy Lee Jones. I have to see the movie again, but Tommy Lee Jones ended up in a tiny fur jockstrap. Was that in the movie?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, if there's a scene in there.
Yeah, yeah, in a party.
Yeah,
He, like that's Tommy Lee Jones, who's, a very stoic, you
yeah.
know,
Serious, kind
incredible
of
actor
hard guy.
who came alive in this
Yeah.
fur, jockstrap. Like, I mean, it was feathers, tiny feathers, and feathers would fall off, and I'd have to go in there with the glue gun and, like on the street of New Orleans, trying to put more feathers on. And like that was an incredible experience. We shot at Angola prison.
Yes, the scene with where Kevin Bacon is in
Kevin.
prison.
Yeah, and that was a moment that has to this day. I mean, there's a movie that is coming up this year to be filmed that takes place in New Orleans in takes place in Angola prison. And I mean, it's just so passionate for me because my mom was a psychologist, at Men's Central Jail in Los Angeles.
Oh.
So those inmates in Angola that ran the Angolite, they were the editors. 𝙁𝙁𝙆 and Ron Wickberg were the editors at the time of this paper that the prison put out. And I met them, and they were in for murder. And there was absolutely the most incredible experience meeting these men because you don't feel any harm or any of that anger. You just feel, I felt like, I don't know, I felt like they were human beings on this planet that had
Hmm?
served their time. I felt so good about them that I gave them my mom's address to become, it was before email, to
Yeah.
become pen pals with my mom to talk about prison reform and jail reform because she was such a big part of that here in California. And my mom was such an incredible human. And that this the people I met, the prisoners I met on JFK
Hmm.
became pals of my mom. You
No
know,
way.
it's just one of these connections, you know. I know it doesn't have anything to do with costuming, but
No, no, no.
it
I
shows,
love hearing these stories,
yeah,
actually.
it shows the experience and these places you go to. Like this is one of the reasons why this incredible career. I'm so grateful every day. I had these experiences on this movie that, I mean, that's what 30 something years ago. And still today, it affects me.
Yeah.
So that movie, yes, I met Kevin Costner and he was,
Yeah. I, I
100%.
was gonna ask you about. I know that Kevin is very detailed oriented person as a filmmaker, and did he have any specific ideas about how his Jim Garrison character should look like, what he should wear? Did he give you any ideas or suggestions? Or sorry if I cut you off. I mean,
Totally fine. Totally fine. No, yes, he does. And still to this day, I think he's a little bit influenced by that kind of high-waisted pleated pant. That is still a vibe that looks so good on him and he feels so good in. And the vest and the shirt tucked, that that Jim Garrison vibe that has taken him to the, like, it's a golf look for him,
yeah,
like, so that's that pant style that timelessly has always looked good on him. He's got long, thin legs. It's got the higher waist. It just is, it's a gentleman's look.
yeah.
And that has always appealed to him. And I think still to this day appeals to him. And I know it does because, I deal with him on that level. And that is something that is, it's a Jim Garrison vibe. Certainly the vest with the shirt, with the higher waist pant, with the pleats, with a nice shoe. You know, I think that is something, yeah, I think it appealed to his core, that
Uh-huh.
costume. And he did say it was it- there was the moments in that film where he was so busy and he was, everybody wanted something. And he just said, not necessarily to me, but to the people in the room, I don't want to keep saying things. Could you please write it down when I say something? And I know that was 35 years ago or 30 years ago. And to this day, I remember him saying that because we always, in costume, we always write things down. And I mean, you see,
With the pad and
I'm
stuff.
that person.
Yeah.
Um, but I wrote things that he said down, and I think I carried that through to Horizon. And I would write things down, what he would say. A lot of times on the movie Horizon, I was persistent in wanting to have time with him at the end of the day because he had so many people during the day. And I would want to know that costume wise, the costumes that I was going to bring forward the next day, that he knew what the thought was, he knew what I was doing. And so I would want to, in the evening after his dinner, go to his house and just sit with him and show him all the looks of everybody. And sometimes it was 100 background. Sometimes it was day players. Sometimes it was new characters. I mean, we had what, 120 speaking roles on
Yeah.
Horizon 1.
Yeah.
And then we had hundreds of background. And I would want to show him each of the different characters because I think that even though he said, I trust you, Lisa, I trust you. But it allowed him to not think about costumes. He knew what he was going to get. He knew that where they were going to be. He knew my thought behind it. He knows that I was there with my notes, that I would follow through if he wanted props to do something and he just thought of it during, at 9 o'clock at night. It allowed him and allowed me to be able to write down what he wanted, and then he didn't have to repeat it during the day. He knew I would follow through. I would give the notes to the ADs if he thought of something that it's funny how, you might see a blue skirt on somebody and that would make him think of something that he would want to see in the scene from another department, it
Uh-huh.
was how his creative mind works,
Yeah.
how we work together so beautifully on Horizon. And I put the effort in to do that so that he could not have to focus on any of that. So from that moment on JFK, where he said that, I followed it through to Horizon. So you don't know, like you don't know who you're going to work with next.
Yeah.
We're all free agents. So after JFK, I went on with Marlene to do other films, but I never, I don't, I didn't expect to ever work with Kevin again. And
But
then,
but you did. You
but I
also did Rumor Has It, right?
rumor has it, yeah.
Mm.
So rumor has it was a movie with Jennifer Aniston
Yes.
and Shirley MacLaine, the most incredible script, um,
Ted Griffin wrote it.
fantastic script. What?
Ted Griffin wrote it.
Oh, I mean, page by page, it was so beautifully crafted, that script. It was one of those times where you read something and you like can really visualize what they were wanting. And that was with Kim Barrett
Mm-hmm.
as a costume designer. And yeah, she's an amazing talent too. And so I ended up many years working with Kim Barrett.
And
And then,
when you did Rumor Has It, like, what was like? Did Kevin? Of course, I think he did. Remember you, right, from JFK?
oh, I don't know if he, you know what?
Not really. Maybe
He
not.
may say that. I
He
don't, I
said,
don't know. I don't know. You in this business, you meet hundreds of people each movie, hundreds of people each movie. And then for somebody like Kevin Costner, he's not only meeting the people on set, but every evening off set, he's meeting hundreds of people.
Yeah,
So the amount of people coming in, and still to this day, the amount of people coming in and out of his life
yeah,
is unlike, it's not my life. I mean,
yeah.
I if I'm focused, I may not remember everybody, but I don't have that. I don't have that many people that come into my life every day. So no, I would
No, no,
say,
I was
I
just
would
wondering.
say even on Horizon, when I had my interview with him, he's like, "Oh yeah, yeah, yeah." But deep down,
Yeah,
I'm one of the 100,000 people that have come through his life in the film business.
yes. Well,
Easily.
it's understandable. So, but you've worked with many big directors on huge movies, like, and I was wondering what your experience with and also I was wondering, I know you've worked with Jim Cameron on True Lies and Avatar, and I was
Yes.
wondering what the similarities between Jim Cameron and Kevin are as directors, because I think they're both very intense people, both of them, very focused. But I don't know what your experience with them is like. What are the differences and the similarities between them? If you would care
Yeah,
to
they
elaborate.
both have a very intense film focus. They both have an incredible ability in writing scripts and understanding what they're looking for in characters and in um, uh, the moments in script. Where where they differ is how maybe, at least for James Cameron on True Lies, how he deals with people was a lot different than how Kevin deals with people.
Yeah.
James Cameron is very, very um, deeply focused on particular things. Like he likes, I would say he's really involved with everything around the camera. Not to say Kevin isn't, and Kevin is too. But Kevin, even on the most intense scenes on Horizon, he would look and he would say, like me, I could use me as an example. I'm sure he did it with other people. He goes, Lisa, come here, get out of the sun. He would break from the focus of what the scene was, see that I'm in the midday sun, and have me stand under the little tent that he's under,
Like it's
like
very
he would
considerate.
break, very considerate. James Cameron on True Lies, I was with him for, it was a 169-day shoot. It was very intense. I have a kind of a little bit of a funny story. Maybe. I don't know if it's maybe for you, movie buff.
Yeah.
I was Marlene Stewart was the costume designer, but she didn't come. She did the shoot in at Los Angeles, but when we went to by the time we went to
Because she's done.
Washington, D.C. and Florida and all of that, she had moved on to another project. So I was there, and James, you have to show him the clothes before they shoot.
Mhm.
And he is not available, not available. I spend my whole day. I have to prep the clothes. I have to be on set. I'm the supervisor. I'm working as the assistant costume designer at this point, overseeing everything on set. And we're in DC, and Jamie Lee Curtis sees me in the lobby of the hotel that she's staying at, and James Cameron's staying at. And she sees me in the morning, like at 9 o'clock, and she goes, Lisa, what are you doing here? And I'm sitting in the lobby with, bags of clothes. I'm like, oh, I have to show Jim the clothes for tomorrow for the young actress, has a big costume change. And she goes, oh, do you think you'll have time to go to the Oval Office? I've got a private tour. You can come with me. I'm like, oh my God, I would love to, but chances are slim I will be out of here. If you're leaving now, I have an appointment with Jim right now and I haven't heard from him. And she goes, oh, too bad. It would be really fun. I said, it would. Thank you so much. 6 hours later, she comes back and I'm still in the lobby. And she goes, you are still here? That's ridiculous. And I go, oh, it's crazy, but he's busy. And she goes, follow me. And we go down the, hallway of his floor. And she goes, stand over there. And she pushes me aside. And she knocks on the door. And James Cameron looks through the peek hole and he sees Jamie Lee Curtis. And he opens the door. He goes, Jamie. And she turns and she goes, Lisa's been waiting in the lobby for 6 hours for you. And And it was that moment I was like, got the power of Jamie Lee Curtis, And so he had to let me in. I had to show the costumes, and Jamie waited there. She didn't have to.
Mhm.
I just said, well, just take a minute. She waited there, made fun chit chat, but allowed me to get my work done, which, to this day, those are you know, um, those moments that you realize it's the team together. You know,
Yes.
Tim obviously had a lot going on. He had a lot of writing. He could let me go. He didn't need to see that. He didn't, in his mind allow for my time. That wasn't important for him. But blah, blah, blah. Jamie Lee Curtis allowed me to use her time, and she allowed, it's that moment that was kind of so, he was tough. He was tough. He's an incredible filmmaker. And then on Avatar 1, I was working with Deborah Scott. And an incredible scene from that is there was not a lot of live filming at that point.
Yes.
We would prep with a small crew for things that would shoot. And but during the prep time, it was about 120 people sitting around
Oh,
this big warehouse, all on computers. And
wow.
it was all digitally done right there in Mar Vista. And James Cameron would be on a small stage, and I think it looked like a wire hanger, but you don't want to get too close, but you had to walk around the stage to get to where I was going. So I would see him and I would, crepe sole shoes, tiptoe through. And and he was doing this with the camera. And I, you know, I didn't know what it was, but he would do this kind of thing. And I was like, God, that, you know, something's going on, and he would do that it took a few days. And it wasn't until I saw the movie that that was the avatars. He was in his own hand with his own,
Oh,
prop was getting the swooshing and the flight patterns. I mean, that's kind of incredible to have witnessed.
yeah.
And he's doing it for the avatars. And I just thought, you know what? Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. And, how they work with people, how they work with filmmaking, sometimes it's not the, the, sometimes it's separate.
Yes.
And that intensity doesn't always translate to, you know, being able to be kind at that moment when you might need help in helping them for tomorrow, whereas the Kevin Costners has the same amount of stress riding on, same amount of, he's the writer, he's the producer, he's the director, he's making decisions, the leading actor, he's making decisions for everything all day long.
And he's got his own money into it.
And he's got his money, and he sees that I'm, you
And the
know,
son.
yeah. And it's not just me. He does that as a courtesy for everyone. I'm just using me as an
Yeah,
example.
no, no,
And you know
sure.
what? It, it's pretty incredible to have worked with Kevin. It's an opportunity of a lifetime. I don't know if I'll ever have that. The Horizon 3 is what I'm waiting on. And I'm hoping that we can get going soon with that because it
And
was,
and number four.
well, and of course number 4. But I have big plans for 3. I can't think about 4 yet. I just have to focus
No,
on
of
3.
course. But you shot a bit of three, right? A tiny bit.
Yeah, yeah, I think that we shot incredible footage for 3. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So basically, you've gone from sci-fi to period pieces to
Yes.
contemporary pieces. I mean, like comic book movies, because you did also the Amazing Spider-Man 2. But basically, what was missing from your resume was a big, old-fashioned, giant
What?
Western, which came in the shape of Kevin Costner's fourth
Yes.
saga, Horizon.
Yeah.
So I want to know, how did the project find its way to you? Walk me through. How did you get like the job? How did the project find its way to you?
Yeah. And not on my resume is the fact that I did 3 Supermans,
Oh
none of
yeah,
them filmed. So they're not on my resume. I did the one with Tim Burton.
yeah. The Superman lives, the
Yep. I did
1998
the one
project.
with Mick, 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 what is Mick B? Mick G.
McG, yes.
G. And I did one with another director. I did almost two
Well,
years
was
of
that
being,
George Miller, the third one? George Miller was
no,
to do it.
no,
But now, just to deviate from Horizon, just a tiny bit, I'm curious about Superman Lives, the Tim Burton version. Just could
It,
you like tell me a
it
bit
was
about
an
it?
incredible experience. Let me just say, I
And
know we're
I
off the
and
subject, but I'll just give you because you're a fan. So I
okay.
was the costume supervisor. Colleen Atwood was the costume designer.
Oh,
I worked with her for 5 years. A lot of the films we did were huge and they never filmed, but like they were incredible, incredible experiences. Um, So one of them being Superman. We were on for a year, prepping for a year. And yeah, Nick Cage as Superman.
Playing
Now,
Superman.
I mean it sounds wild,
Yeah.
but and I know the footage. I wish, my house burned down in the Woolsey fire, but I never showed anyone. But I was there because it was the costume,
Wow.
taking videos of everything. Oh, it was amazing. But Nick Cage as Superman was going a place that was so incredible. And I also taped everything, so every fitting I had on tape because there were such intense fittings that you wanted to be able to go back. I wanted Colleen to go back and hear the things that Tim would say, hear the things that Nick Cage would say, because when you're in the fitting itself, it was really hard to kind of always have that focus. So, yeah, that was going to be an incredible film. And Nick Cage as Superman, his passion was, if there's such a thing as more than 100%, he was there. He's a ultimate comic book fan.
Yeah, I
He was
know.
taking not only Superman, but I think Clark Kent to a place that I think the audience would have been so entertained and it would have been so great. We were getting him dressed for the camera test. We were at the studio, we were at the stage. We had the outfit as complete as it ever was. You never saw that because that video was from a fitting in Vancouver or no, Toronto when we had to fly to do a fitting where Dick Cage was there. So what we were doing was the final kind of camera test outfit wasn't seen on film. And we were pulling the costume in, and his assistant called Colleen and said, Nick's not coming. And it was that moment where we were like, Colleen's like, Nick's not coming. And it was that moment where Tim Burton pulled out. This is
Oh,
how I heard it. Tim Burton pulled out because Warner Brothers was more involved in the toy, not the
yeah.
creative process that they
Yeah, the creative process of the film.
no, they
It's-
and
Yeah.
we didn't know that until Tim Burton was on Howard Stern. And that's what he said on Howard Stern. Up until that moment, I didn't know
Yeah, it
what the
was.
real reason.
Yeah, it's the same problem he encountered when he was supposed to do the third Batman, which ended up being Batman Forever, starring Val Kilmer.
Yep.
And he pulled out because he had so much headache during the second one because he had to approve the Happy Meals and he had to approve the toys before any of the designs for the movie were ever
Yeah.
approved. But
Yeah.
he had to go and deal with the toy companies and the McDonald's and all that and he's not that guy. So
No.
I understand why, because he'd already gone through that on Batman Returns, and and when he met with Warner Brothers about, possibly doing a third one, it was like, I'm not sure that I want to go in. I want to get myself into this again, having gone through twice, Batman 1
Yeah.
and 2. So, yeah, but I mean, just the idea of Tim Burton doing Superman and with Nicolas Cage in the part. And I've read somewhere that maybe Michael Keaton was supposed to do a cameo as
I never.
Batman,
Yeah,
but
I didn't
maybe
hear
it's
that.
just a rumor, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah. But you know what? At that point, it was Kevin Spacey.
Yeah.
At, and it was I'm trying to think of who the leading people were, but for sure Nick Cage was the guy that we were fitting things on. And oh, it was incredible. And then just so you know, the calves for the Superman outfit, a little tidbit, the calves from the Superman outfit and maybe the biceps
Uh-huh.
were used because I worked with Colleen on the Tick,
Oh,
the the pilot of the Tick, and we had 6 weeks to get the Tick going. So the same sculptor who did Superman, who did all the Batmans, well, most of the Batmans, the good Batmans, That same sculptor did the tick. And so he took the calves from Superman and I think it was the biceps and the forearms, already for the actor on the tick. So
Oh,
if you see the pilot for the tick,
heck, it's the
it's Nick Cage's calves.
is that Jose Fernandez? Jose
Yeah, Jose.
Jose Fernandez. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they're the
yeah, it's
most talented.
terrific. Yeah, it's really terrific.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. So, sorry, I just like
Yeah, yeah. So, anyways,
took off on a tangent
yeah,
about
yeah.
the.
So I'll
But
tell you about how I got onto Horizon. So
yeah,
I did 7 films with Michael Bay.
yeah,
From the
Transformers.
supervisor to the costume designer, I did 7 different films with him. So, the production designer from all of those films, is a amazing talent, Jeffrey Beecroft.
Hmm.
And he was a good friend of Kevin's.
Yeah,
So
he's
Jeffrey
expensive.
Beecroft introduced me to Kevin. And I don't know who the first costume designer on Horizon was, a gentleman who maybe wasn't giving Kevin what he wanted. Don't know. There was some issue. So Jeffrey Beecroft called me and said, you know what? He needs somebody like you who can handle big projects, who's creative, who doesn't get pulled down by size, or doesn't there's no ego. It's.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah. So I did a huge presentation for Kevin. Um, I sent off, I did deep research. I did a lot of, you know, accurate, because he is a storyteller and he knows his history really
Yeah.
well. So I tried to
So
give.
just out of curiosity, what did this presentation consist of?
It consisted of paintings, not sculptures, paintings and photographs of each of the different aspects of the script. So we start in 1860s. So I did wagon train, actual wagon train, photographs, especially from the Mormons. They have some
Uh-huh.
incredible history and some incredible images. So I did broke the script into sections, and I tried to represent different characters for each of these. So I tried to kind of control it. I did White Mountain Apaches. I did Pima. I did Pawnee. Um, and in that, I had pictures of my grandfather. He was a doctor on the Navajo reservation in 1920, early 30s. So my
Oh,
mom was raised with the Navajo. And so I have this kind of, this moment of wanting to represent the Native Americans with respect and dignity. And I wanted to be able to kind of show Kevin that that was my history, my family's history. And so he was touched by that. My grandfather um, was like the only doctor for 10 years in Tuba City. And he took care of all the births for that region, and all the sickness and all of that kind of thing.
wow.
So I had a couple amazing photos of him all dressed in white, and the contrast with the Native Americans dressed in their traditional, what they wore, on a day to day, not show stuff, just the real outfits. And the contrast was really beautiful. And I said, for Dr. Vreeland, when we go to the fort, it would be really nice to represent him in that kind of idea. And Kevin, that was it. So that's how Dr. Vreeland became the man in the white linen, run down, dirty, but still kind of separating himself. And, there's just the position of being a doctor so
Yeah.
often was always represented in creams and whites, even in these kind of rugged times. I thought it was kind of nice, because there was my grandfather, in the same kind of situation, in living in the situation that my mom grew up in, was rugged for sure. And it was kind of nice to see the white, and Kevin saw that. So my book was probably 80 to 100 pages where I put things like Dr. Vreeland, an idea for how I would like to see him. And I did for Kevin, and I did for, what I would like to do for each of the characters. And an overall view for the women, because each woman that we had in our script was very specific how he described it. So I would want to kind of represent how he described it, not necessarily how the history, but I certainly showed him, how the waist came in and how the hoop skirt really by this point was the piece that people wore, but maybe out in the West, the hoop skirt was just represented by a couple petticoats. So you still get that hip
Yeah.
shape and you still get that fullness of skirt. And he, so we went through, so I sent that off to him. I did it as a WeTransfer, which is a way of sending
Yeah, yeah, I
many.
know. We
So
transfer.
yeah,
Yeah.
WeTransfer. And then I didn't hear anything.
Oh,
And
and
then I get a note from WeTransfer, and I was like, oh, it's a week, it's 2 weeks. I
and
think it
did
was almost 2 weeks.
and did
Maybe it was. But
did it
you
dumb you
start to
out?
panic that maybe he hasn't called back. And I was like, okay, that's not good. Who do I call? Do I call, it's not like there's a lot of people that had phone numbers like, did Kevin see my presentation? Did he move on? A lot of times when you have these moments, you don't hear that you got the job or not. It's a horrible thing to go through. But when you don't get hired, they don't call you necessarily unless you know someone. And so thankfully, Jeffrey said he's shooting Yellowstone and he doesn't have internet. He's in the middle of Montana
Yeah.
somewhere. So thankfully, he called. He goes, I'm sorry, I had to have somebody like drive to download it, print it, and bring it back to me. So we were able to go through, and he did it old-fashioned style, where he turned the page, physically. And so we went through the whole research, and he immediately hired me. You know, we went through, already had, he was saying, well, that's what I see is, I said, well, maybe that would be the guy that we see at the old church, like that kind of look. He goes, no, that would be you know, another character. And I didn't know who the other character was, but I just took notes in what he said about each of the characters that we went through. But what he was doing is going through characters in Horizon 2 as well. And he was telling me I hadn't read Horizon 2. So he
Oh,
was going through in my book, in my research book, he was saying that that would represent what he would like to see for these other characters. So it was kind of nice. We went through this whole book and it was, pretty, it took hours. And he had hours, which was really nice that he took the time to go through. He went through it once on his own where he was inspired by things. And then when with me explaining what my thought process was and how I would like to represent these different characters, like the White Mountain Apache and the chief and like the women, in Watts Parish, how we would kind of separate them. And so that's kind of was the basis, were the photographs and the paintings that were in the research. And then from there, when we would move forward and create the character, I would take that research and then find the fabric and create the silhouette that was good for the period and good for the actor's body. Everybody is built so different that you can't just take that off the page. You have to make it work for the character that's in front of you, the actor that's in front of you, and how we need to have them represent. And then because like, and um, so many different, moments in, where they are together, I had to really work on making sure that if there was a similarity, it was on purpose. And
okay.
if there was colors that came together, that it would work beautifully as a harmony. So that was a little bit of a, you
Wow.
know, and that, when you have, we had so many speaking roles, like say on the wagon train.
Oh, God. So
Yeah,
many people there.
so many. Yeah, it was so much fun. I mean,
Um,
honestly, every day it was another fantastic adventure
it was an adventure every day, right?
every day.
I'm thinking, with Kevin being so specific and detailed oriented, I'm thinking about his character's costume, Hayes. I'm thinking about the hat. I'm thinking about the vest. I'm thinking about the scarf. I mean, I don't know if that's the correct
Yes.
term, but could you walk me through the process that you guys went through to find Hayes' costume? It is very peculiar. So did Kevin have something specific he wanted, like I don't know, say the hat, or the scarf he really wanted? How did that costume come together for Hayes?
Well, what was super nice and very, I would say, confident with Kevin was that that was not his first conversation with me. His ego doesn't put him in the front. His mind was, let's get the women to look beautiful. Let's get all of that kind of together. And so he is one of those guys that we spent a long time working on the entire show before we even started talking about him. I knew, and I would bring it up once in a while, that the silhouettes he's had before, because he's done movies before,
Yes.
Westerns, that we didn't ever want to copy the hat. We wanted to kind of move away from a couple things that he's done. But there's also a comfort that he has with the styling of things that he's done before that he feels kind of maybe
Implemented.
feels, yeah, like that just he represents what he wants Hayes to be.
Hmm.
So the hat was a big deal. The hat's the biggest deal. And for any man on a Western film, I think that it starts here.
Yeah.
If the man feels, and you can't try on the hat until you have the outfit, but once you get a hat that was good, then everything else kind of falls into place. So we actually tried the hat on at Kevin's place in Moab long before we tried on his costume.
Oh.
He was wanting to try on the hat. And so I knew I couldn't do the hat from a few different other shows. So I brought up a hat similar to the one, but I also brought up probably in that fitting, the first Horizon one, I probably brought up, for the first go, probably had 12 hats. And I had
Wow.
I wanted to go a dark blue gray. I wanted to go charcoal. I wanted to do something that kind of sat low, that he wasn't exposed. I didn't want the hat to sit up. I
Hmm.
wanted it to be down on just above his eyebrow. I wanted it to be um, um, to say something about who he could be. And so we tried on a lot of hats. And I think we came down to 3 or 4 hats that we really liked without the costume. Then in a week or so, he came after we were not shooting yet. I don't think we were shooting. And he came to my office. And when Kevin was on the movie, I don't know how it was when he was with you, but on Horizon, the beginning of Horizon 1, he came with 2 or 3 producers. He came with his assistant. He came with just people around because they were probably scouting, and it just takes that many the director of photography. So they all were in a car together. So they all came to the fitting together,
Yeah.
which is a little mayhemy for me to have so many opinions. So we're in my office, my big space, and we had a big TV in my office. We always played westerns because in Utah they have a western channel that plays
Oh,
westerns
okay.
24 hours a day. Old westerns, fantastic. So we always played that, and I had it on because it was always on. And Kevin loved the fact that we were playing old westerns. I'm like, it's a station here in Utah. it all day long. You
Day
can
long
watch.
it goes westerns.
It goes Western. And so the Westerns were playing, and Kevin came in with a iPad, and he had a football game. I think it's always football he's watching. At least maybe seasonally, it was football season.
Okay.
So somebody's got that. And so he's watching that. And then all of these guys are chit-chatting, talking. And I'm putting on this costume. And Kevin starts, you know, you could see that moment when he starts to feel the character. And that's a great moment on the making of. I don't know. Have you seen the making of?
No, I haven't. Kevin showed 15 minutes to me, but I don't remember in those 15 minutes there being him trying the costumes on. So,
Yeah.
but I'm looking forward to watching the whole documentary eventually when it
Yeah.
comes out.
It's it's pretty great. They do film it. I don't like to be filmed, but um, so I'm always trying to scurry behind camera. But they're filming it, and you see the energy in the room. You know, he actually kind of the guys gave kind of great. You know, you never know when somebody's in a room with an actor what their feedback is going to be, but it was such masculine. Oh, that's so, you know, like they all were kind of giving kind of the masculine response to
Huh?
a costume fitting. I loved it. I didn't know if I would, but it was pretty great to have them all kind of, cheer on when he put on the hat that he ultimately ended up wearing with the coat that he wore,
It's beautiful.
the scarf. So we ended up with two different length jackets. Back to how we structured it. I made a one that was good for the saddle, like just perfect length for him riding. It
Um,
was brown. It was a little more outdoorsy. It was short. So we had that one. And then we did one that was a little longer, a little bit more of a character that has I would say more of a commanding presence. And with the dark hat. The scarf we ended up with as the signature scarf was a classic, what is called a block print.
hmm,
And this was a way of printing, original way of printing, cutting wood, putting ink on it, and printing the fabric. So that's an original, it's not an original, but that's a block print fabric from India. That
well,
was a long, like what would be a sarong. And so we cut it into two scarves and over dyed it, processed it, aged it. And that's how we ended up with that scarf. And I think the scarf was a bit more interesting than other ones we tried on. And I thought it kind of created a little bit of mystery who this Hayes character is. He says so little,
yeah.
especially in Horizon 1. He says a little bit more in Horizon 2.
Yeah.
But, I think we have to have something that kind of made the audience kind of wonder who this guy is. He's quick with the gun, not with the words. And, maybe I think it kind of showed some compassion or
Yeah,
something.
I think the scarf is actually my favorite piece of clothing that he wears. I don't know what it is, but the pattern on it, I don't know, I just respond to it. Like I like it as I don't know, I would wear it personally. Like
Yes.
I like it. I would wear it. Like I would like to do it. But I was wondering, Lisa, if you actually sketched out the costume for him, or did you do sketches for the costume, or was it
No,
no?
no, I think I had 3 months to get this going.
Oh yeah, yeah. So it was really compressed.
I attempted in the very beginning. I kind of wanted to do sketches for not the Native Americans for sure. And it just one moment after another didn't get the sketches. And I also saw that Kevin responded to when I showed the first research thing I did, you know, he responded to the authentic.
Uh-huh.
And I asked him if he needed illustrations or swatches. He doesn't, the swatch that goes back to that tiny little swatch from JFK.
Yes.
He doesn't respond to the swatch. He
Got it.
doesn't. respond, he responds to the finished garment.
Yeah, to the real thing, to the
Yeah, and I thought, well,
clothing.
I'll put my time into producing finished garments and I'll put my money into that. And I think he had the confidence having gone through and just our dialogue, he didn't need to see. And he was the only one. If I had a whole, you know, like if I had to show it to Warner Brothers and to all of those people, and if I had to show it to producers and people who were going to sell the film, I think I would have had to have done illustrations
Situation.
for sure.
Yeah.
Because then you have all the talking heads that want to see more detail. For Kevin, he immediately knew that we were our conversations were what he needed, and
Yeah.
my research and my passion of the project. And I think the fact that I really worked hard in trying to find fabrics that were accurate for the period. So for like the character of Juliet,
Mm.
it was really important for me for her to stand out without taking all the attention, without taking all the energy from the scene. I wanted her to stand out in the beautiful way that I think she ended up standing out. Like her dress was cleaner than anybody, but it blended with the scenery. And I wanted it to look tonally kind of like where we're shooting. So it wasn't like I did her in a orange dress or a bright green dress. I didn't want that kind of attention. I just wanted it to look period perfect and to fit in and stand out all at once.
Yeah.
I ended up finding a fabric that was period that I could then create. So I had that fabric printed. Amazing guy in Los Angeles that can print fabric. So I had a swatch. He printed it. We over dyed it, and then we aged it. And that's how we were able to come up with that fabric. And I think that we ended up having to make enough dresses that you'll see in Horizon 2. Um, what happens
Oh,
to
I've
her?
seen Horizon too.
Oh, you did?
I was in Venice. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. So
Yeah.
you see the change of her, her strength and her resilience for what her character goes through.
Yes.
And so you had to see that dress kind of change and transform, you know. And so that's what we ended up with on her dress. So that's why we had to make multiples.
Yeah.
And we had to have a dress that kind of worked with the characters of evolution through the scripts. So, and Kevin loved that. Kevin loved, the crispness, the kind of the English quality that we had, since we had so many people on the wagon train that were from different places.
Yes.
We wanted to kind of show those, have them stand out, but blend in. So that's what we kind of did with in her in particular and her husband Hugh.
Uh,
So
yeah, I mean the costumes on this project. I mean, I just loved it. Not because I'm talking to you, but ever since I first saw the trailer back like 2 years ago or whenever, I was like, wow. And I really loved Kevin's outfit. The hat stood out because that's an unusual hat. You've
very,
I've never seen a cowboy hat look like that, and he's never worn one like that either.
yeah.
And
So
the
the
scarf
hat,
stood out, like the scarf, like again, I would wear it personally. I just love it so much, and a terrific job. I mean, like you're such. I mean, I'm fascinated by artists like you. Like I don't know how you do it. I mean, I wish I had the talent. But and I was wondering if Kevin's costume undergoes a transformation in 3 and 4. Does it change? I know you. I'm not asking you to give away anything, but does it change like his costume? Like
well, you saw the end of Horizon 2. He gets
yes,
on the train wearing
yes,
military
Yeah,
uniform.
exactly. Yeah, he has the military jacket
And
on.
he's wearing his hat.
Yeah.
So when he arrives to where he's going on three, maybe he doesn't get to the point he wants to get to, but I don't want to give away the
No,
story,
no, no,
but
of course not.
things happen and he loses his hat.
No.
And there's a very dramatic scene.
Okay.
And then he has to get a new hat. So the new hat is definitely something that is pulled from a Remington painting and a cowboy from a Remington. So the new hat in Horizon 3 is definitely straight from a painting. And so that is something exciting. So yeah, he gets the silhouette remains similar because the costume doesn't. The textures and the fabric change, but the idea of having a jacket that protects him from all weather, all those pieces that are important for a man that's on a horse
Yes.
don't change.
Okay.
So that doesn't change. He does get a couple other pieces because we go into snow country. So, he is paid well for what he does, and he does what he does very well. So he has enough money and he has a couple things made. He has a shearling coat. He has a few things that are made for him along his journey, and it's a long journey. So
Oh,
ultimately, I think we will find him in Horizon, and I think that's you know,
yeah.
three is a very exciting time because it's in 1870s, so there is a time passage. And costume for me changes because it goes from, the fullness of the hip to a slight bustle.
Oh,
And
okay.
so the women have a change, and I think that the bustle is still the tight torso with the bustle is super. I love that look. And
So the most
so,
dramatic change in costumes will be happening to the women,
oh,
basically.
it's the women. Yeah.
Women, right?
Men's sleeve, I don't know if a novice watching it would notice, but the sleeves in early 60s are much wider for men, and that kind of comes down. The leg comes down in the 70s. But for the characters that we see in our film, they're working class, and they basically are, their silhouette remains similar, the same.
Last question. I don't want to hold you up any more than I already have.
Yeah, sorry, I can talk,
Yeah,
get me going.
yeah. No, I love that. I mean, that you're so willing to share all of this. I was wondering, what are some of the most meaningful things that you and Kevin have shared professionally on this journey that it's not over yet, that will always stay with you?
Well, I have to say, it's those moments we were in, like Horizon One, we were in a town called Moab.
Yeah.
And Moab is really in the middle. It's exquisite. It is the most beautiful little town in Utah. But it's also super isolated that there's nothing opens on Sunday. And I think what struck me is how as much as Kevin worked all week and 16 hours days easily, he would go to bed only thinking about the scenes, and I don't think they were always good dreams because I think that it's that panic of the weather the next day. Do I have everything I need? And you're isolated. So you have to count on your team. And in my department, I'm the microcosm of the whole movie. I only have what I have brought with me to Moab. I have my team and I have the most amazing team of costumers that you could have in making this film. And and I put that together. Kevin put his team together. And on the weekends, he would invite a lot of people over, always to his house to have barbecues, to have parties, to be together. And I think that feeling of family and feeling that you are important and that you are a major part of this, I think that's something that I will carry with me for the rest of my life. He made, I think, everyone that had an opportunity to work closely with him to feel they were a major part on this production. And I don't think, I've probably done close to 100 films. I don't think I've ever had that moment. And I think part of it is being isolated. Part of it is, being the biggest part was having Kevin at the top, and that energy coming down affects everybody. And I think that we all got along, and I think we all worked really well together. And I think it's because of the Kevin Costner's spirit of unity and just his presence. Just, you know, it,
Yeah.
it, it's you feel like everything's gonna be okay when he just looks at you and gives you that Kevin Costner twinkle. Like I'm like, is everything good with you? And he doesn't even have to say anything. He just looks and you just contact with his eye, and it's that moment that charisma.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't even
yeah.
it goes beyond charisma. He just lets you
It's
know
got
in
like
his.
this, yeah, it's got a spirit about him, like something like yeah, it's just I can't put my finger on it, but I understand what you're saying. I understand what you're
Yeah.
saying.
And it doesn't, he makes sure you're okay.
Yeah, exactly.
And you, it's never selfish.
Yeah.
And that I have to say is remarkable. And that I think is something that I'll take with me. And it's going to be hard to find somebody on that level, on his level, that that looks at you and appreciates you on a day to day, not at the end of the film, not at the end of the week, on a moment to moment, day to day appreciation. And that is probably what will stay with me.
Yeah. Um,
You know what? He's unique.
yeah, he is, and it's a really, really unique individual and very. He's got a big heart, and um, I was wondering if you kept any mementos from Horizon. Not, it's not over yet, but from one and two, have you kept anything from the?
I have never kept
Oh,
anything
okay.
from any movie.
Okay.
If you were to walk into my house, you wouldn't know what I do. I think I
Okay.
have kind of home that I don't, I mean, I have a baseball cap. My husband wears it. Um, but no, I'm not a memento.
Okay.
Um, I think if I had, having lost everything I own in a fire
Yeah.
makes me even feel less inclined
Keep anything.
to save and to have that. I have it on film, those moments. I do have the keys to the storage unit where all the costumes are. So, and maybe I'm the only one with the keys because I know where everything is if I would have to do a presentation or a thing with the costumes. So maybe that is also kind of
Okay.
the keys to the Horizon costume kingdom.
Yeah, yeah,
I
I'd
have
love.
it all there.
I would love to have those.
You know,
No.
but when you do this for a living, the value is what you have on screen. For me, the value is just having that on screen. It's not
Yeah,
holding it in my hand.
I get it. I understand. I understand.
I have a little tidbit for you
Okay.
um, that you may or may not have heard. I went up to the opening in Santa Barbara,
Yes.
and my position is I did the talk on stage with Kevin and the composer afterwards. So I was sitting right behind Kevin. Sitting right next to Kevin was Tarantino.
Oh yeah.
Did you hear the story?
No, I didn't hear it.
Okay,
I knew
it's
he
a
was
it's
there.
it's for you. It's for you as a tidbit. he, people didn't know he was coming. It wasn't planned for him to be there. But apparently, the barricades all around, Kevin steps out and people scream, Kevin, Kevin. And he goes over to a few and signs a few things and goes in. And Gilly saw a guy screaming, Kevin, Kevin. And he's like, well, that looks like a homeless Tarantino. This is what Gilly's saying. And then Gilly looks back and he's like, wait, that's Tarantino. And so he went over and had security let Tarantino in through the gate. Tarantino just showed up. He sat right next to Kevin, which was right in front of me, which is big, I mean, Tarantino's films are
Yeah.
amazing. And the entire film, he was engaged, he was laughing, he was, his response was 100% film. And afterwards, I don't do the social thing of kind of gathering in and trying to get near, but I ended up, Gilly pulled me in, and Gilly was sitting next to Tarantino. So I sat next to Gilly. And Gilly introduced me. And he goes, oh, I know you. You did the talk afterwards. And he goes, your costumes are beautiful. And I was like, thank you so much. I said, how did you end up coming here? I don't know if you have just frozen,
No,
but
no, no.
we'll hope that this has been, you're able to hear it. Um, so Tarantino said to me, um, you know, I saw a lot of movies this last year. What? Can you hear me?
No, it just uh now
Oh,
I
you're
can
frozen.
connection here.
Okay. I don't know.
I can hear you, but you're frozen.
Okay, you're still frozen.
There you
Okay,
are.
there you are.
Yeah. So
Okay, so I don't know
you
what part you
Tarantino.
got, but anyways,
Yeah.
I was introduced to Tarantino in the
Okay.
after party. I'm sitting next to him. He told me my costumes were beautiful, which meant the
Yeah.
world. And then I said, how did you end up here? And he said, I had seen Horizon One and I thought about all the films I saw. And I thought to myself, Horizon One was the best film I saw all year long. And I read that Horizon Two was opening and I was not going to miss it. So I drove up here to see Horizon Two. So on his own, he was so moved by Horizon One that he came up on his own for Horizon Two. And I said more directors need to support films like you did. I mean, that's kind of an incredible story. And I love the fact that he was there. And I said, I think it means the world to have a director in your caliber to come up and be with Kevin, who's also a director who have tremendous skill and talent. And to have you support each other is incredible. And and so I that made me feel like, wow, that's what directors now need to do more than ever in supporting each other.
Yes.
And I thought Tarantino was the first one, and good for him. And
Yeah.
then I had set up mannequins, and it's so much work. And I dressed 4 or 5 mannequins at the after party. And my nephew, who was a PA helping me at that, was the only kid kind of like behind the mannequins, just trying to, do the last bit. And Tarantino walks right up to Francis's mannequin, which is Sienna Miller, and
Yeah.
he touches. I had just had it unbuttoned right to here, just where the tiny bit of her chemise, which is the little lace underbit. You barely see a little bit of it. And he walked up and he goes, that, and he pushes in on it. He goes, that's what I've been looking at for the last 3 hours. And it was just that moment where he's like laughed to himself, like, like a dude. And that is what I've been looking at, like kind of, and I just thought, oh,
Crazy
means,
story.
means the
Wow.
world to me that Tarantino was, he pays attention to detail. He pays attention to those subtle laughs. He was whispering to Kevin a couple times about, different things, Sienna and, like the character in that Michael Provost, in the breaking that scene was so incredible. He mentioned something to Kevin about that. And of course I had to tell Michael because, like to have Tarantino whisper about your performance is a big deal. And so it was really nice. So that was my last little tidbit about it
Oh,
all.
thank you so much. Wow, and for like, I'm glad for Kevin that he got Tarantino's support and he showed up, and I'm so glad for him. I hope it made his night.
Yeah, I don't even know if Kevin knows he wasn't like on the list of inviting. Like he was out, if it wasn't for Gilly seeing a guy out there, I don't think that, you know,
Yeah,
Tarantino, who knows if he would have made it in.
yeah, exactly. Well, thank you so much, Lisa,
Sure, sure.
I hope to see you on Horizon 3.
Yes, I
Uh,
won't forget this time.
yeah. No, I mean, you have every right to have forgotten. I mean, it was just a quick like introduction. You were so busy. I mean, I don't expect anyone to remember me, but thank you for your for sharing so much of your story and
Yeah, of course.
personal stuff. It means the world to me that you would, and I hope you have a terrific day ahead of you.
You
And
too.